Cosmic Confluence podcast. Now, sometimes the healing we seek doesn't come from medicine, therapy, or even the wisdom of those around us. It comes from deep within, from places beyond memory and beyond time. Now, what if the pain you carry today began lifetimes ago? What if the guidance you've been longing for is waiting in the spirit world with your soul's companions and guides? Some interesting questions, right, listeners?
Yeah.
So, listeners, welcome to today's episode of Cosmic Confluence. I'm your host, Sana, as always. And today we are journeying into the mystery of past lives, the spirit world, and the ways we can heal across generations and lifetimes. My guest, Craig Meriwether, a certified clinical hypnotherapist, medical hypnosis specialist, and author of the Past Lives Guidebook. Through his work at Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy, he has helped people uncover hidden wounds, release ancestral patterns, and reconnect with their soul's mission. So, together we are going to explore how past life regression and spiritual journeys can become tools for healing, awakening, and empowerment. And also, we'll ask the harder questions about what's real, what's symbolic, and how we integrate these insights into our everyday life. So, Craig, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Oh, thank you, Sonia. I'm really been looking forward to this conversation. It's a fascinating conversation, a fun conversation. So I'm looking forward to diving in deep.
Definitely, definitely. And to begin with, let's talk about past life regression. Now, there are so many misconceptions. Some call it as pseudoscience, some call it as completely, uh some mysterious thing. So for someone who is new to this, what actually happens in a past life, regression session, and how do you help people feel safe enough to surrender to the process?
Sure. The the core of this work is the person's intention. I can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. I just can't pull somebody off the street who has no interest in this and make them have some sort of experience. It's all about the intention of the person and whether they're curious and have maybe read some books, maybe Brian Weiss books or Dolores Cannon or someone else, and are just curious about have they had their own past lives, or they're seeking some deep healing, whether there's an emotional healing, maybe there's a mindset issue. There's so many issues around fears and phobias, maybe fear of deep water or of heights or something else. Maybe even physical healing, because it's really about releasing and letting go of whatever connections you may be holding on to in the past. One of the books that I go back to help focus people's attention on how this works is Michael Newton's Journey of Souls. And the amount of research and work he did with people over decades really helps focus how I work with people. And so, mainly, it's just allowing the body and mind to relax. Uh, if I was working with somebody for the first time, maybe never done any sort of work like this before,
Mhm.
we'd probably start with a warm up exercise just to let them know what it's all about, a visualization exercise, and maybe up on a movie screen, they're wandering through their house and then they pretend they're in their house. They're in their kitchen. They move to the refrigerator. They move to the stove and they get the idea, oh, yeah, I can have these visualizations or these sensations or this experience of being somewhere else. And that's all it is using your imagination. But the idea is it's not you're just making something up. It may seem like that, but really what you're doing is tapping into your own higher self, your own inner wisdom. And the idea is that we as souls
Mhm.
come to earth and have experiences of lives on earth for learning, for growth, for development as souls. And so we'll create, to a certain extent, of scenarios where we have to learn. We may go through experiences that are terrifying and traumatic,
Mm.
and not for the sake of just being terrified and of being afraid, but that we can use those experiences as growth, which is sometimes a hard thing to wrap your mind around, especially if you've gone through some very traumatic experiences in life. But
Mhm.
again, going back to the Michael Newton books, Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls, he worked with so many people through the 1970s, 1980s, and 2000s, and realized that people were having similar experiences, even though they didn't know each other. They came from different backgrounds, different cultures, different ethnicities, different ages,
Mhm.
and they were having similar experiences. And he realized it couldn't just be coincidence. Maybe one or two, okay, maybe that's a coincidence. But people who didn't know each other, who had so different, many different kinds of backgrounds, were having
Mhm.
very similar experiences. And when the evidence, and while I can't sit here and prove it outright,
Mhm.
when you have so many experiences and you have so much evidence around remote viewing and various things, which I know is this is a 10-hour conversation
Mhm.
that we could probably have.
Yeah.
But you see the healing that people go through, which is what gives me the inclination that this is real. And if
Mhm.
it's not specifically real on a spiritual level, it's maybe a metaphoric healing within the subconscious. And either way, it's really about the healing that you'll achieve in this life. But whether you're just curious, maybe you want to see if you've connected with another person, your best friend, maybe your wife or your husband, boyfriend or girlfriend,
Mhm.
or uh, you were seeking a healing. Maybe there's so much anger you're feeling in life. You're feeling so much hurt or pain or anxiety, and you're not sure where it's from. You live in the mountains of Arizona, like I do, and maybe you have a deep fear of water, even though you've never seen the ocean. Why would that be? And it may be connected to one of these past lives. So, in terms of, I know there's a long answer to maybe a short question you asked about
Mhm.
what the experience is for people, but whether we do this over Zoom, um, which is way a lot of all of this kind of therapies are happening nowadays, or it happens in person, it's moving the mind and body into a more relaxed, daydreamy state. And everybody can do this. Everybody has the ability to let their minds wander. This is
Mhm.
the opposite of meditation. It may feel like meditation or savasana at the end of a yoga class or something, but this is the opposite of meditation. Meditation, you want to be in the present moment. You want to bring your
Yeah.
attention back to the breath and again and again and remain in this present moment. And that's the practice. Well, this uh, kind of exercise of this process of past life regression or hypnotherapy in and of itself is allowing the mind to wander to the future, wander to the
Mhm.
past. And just like you could relax in a recliner at home, on a couch, in a comfortable desk chair, dining room table chair, close your eyes and remember, last week you went out with a friend to lunch, or you went to the store, or you went to work, or you went to school. Last
Mhm.
Monday, you went to school, you went to work, you hung out with your friends, you picked the kids up from school. And you have that yeah, yeah, I remember I was in the car and yeah, uh, somebody cut me off in traffic, and then there was a big accident, I was in a traffic jam. You remember all these things.
Mhm.
It's very similar, only instead of just remembering last week or last month or 20 years ago at your, birthday party when you're 10 years old or whatever, instead of doing that, we do it one step further. Okay, well, instead of going back to when you were 18 years old, when you're 10 years old, when you're 5 years old, let's go back to that past life you experienced where you're connected to this fear, you're connected to this hurt and pain. And it can be very healing, of course, very revealing, very insightful. A lot of discoveries can be made, including about purpose of life and why maybe life happens the way it does to you. But really, it's nothing magical or mystical other than, the idea that you can look at the book of your life, your lives,
Mhm.
and find new, um new insights to discover how you should move through this current life. And it's quite can be quite healing.
Can be. It can be. It can be overwhelming, but it can be so healing, because
Mhm.
um, I really loved how you highlighted the experience isn't about just proving that, we have a connection with maybe a kind of traumatic experience that we are having or we had in this life with the past, but it's more about healing the present. And I think
Yeah.
that's a very empowering way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's, I mean, quite extraordinary because then even if you're coming into this with some
Mhm.
doubt, with some hesitation, and that's fine, you can still have a healing experience because it's about this life. And even if you feel even if you have a wonderful, extraordinary experience, you're like, "Well, I don't believe it's true." That's fine, you don't have to believe it's true. It's again about the healing in this life. If you want to consider it as a metaphoric healing your subconscious mind creates to deal with the hurt and pain or discovering insights about your purpose, your mission, your ultimate goals in this life, that's fine too. But the extraordinary evidence that's out there, uh, and again, this could be a 10-hour conversation.
Mm.
Um, in fact, I just wrote my book about it, Past Lives Guidebook, about the science and the biology, even what's going on in the brain. And the bibliography was going to be 70 pages long. And so I only put a handful of says that you can look at it on bibliography online, but there's so much science behind this. And you put
Mhm.
this part together with that part and this other part, and you put it together, it's like, yeah, why wouldn't it be a real thing? There's no evidence to suggest that this is a singular life, you know, and that's what's I consider frustrating when you have a conversation with somebody who maybe doesn't really believe in past life regression. And they say, "Oh, I don't believe past life. I believe this is our only life. We live it to the fullest, and then we die, and we turn off the lights, so to speak." I was like, "Okay, well, prove it." Well, they can't. They expect you to prove your side, and here's the evidence I have. I have a 450-page book that
Mhm.
is mostly about science and the biology of this, and no one can prove with any sort of science, with any sort of biology, that is just a one and done, even though through the centuries, through thousands of years,
Mhm.
cultures and ethnicities from around the world believe that we live multiple lives, maybe in different ways. Maybe they have different thoughts about it. But certainly here, you're talking to me from India. I'm here in America, although Craig Meriwether, obviously, my heritage is Scottish and English and Irish. But like we can come from different cultures and different backgrounds, and even different thoughts about life in the universe, and yet still have this commonality of, yeah, I believe that I've lived before, and that even what happened to me before in a past life, whether it was 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago, or further, or somewhere in between, is still affecting me in some way, maybe possibly in a negative way, maybe a positive way, but generally people are coming to past life regression often because there's a negative connection and it needs to
Mm.
be cut. And that's the power of this. Is that it's at least with the work I do and many others who do this work, this isn't just, a fun experience. It can be, obviously, but
Mhm.
it's about the healing, and sometimes people go in fact, one of the stories I have in my book is about someone who, was going through this when I was training in this work at the Hypnotherapy Academy of America here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Wonderful school, and, oh part of the training of the 500 hours, 100 hours is just focusing on past life regression. And one of the stories that was told, that the teacher had experienced, not him himself, but a friend of his, when he
Mhm.
told his friend he was becoming a hypnotherapist, he was working on past life regression. He said, "Oh, my wife had a past life regression up in Taos, New Mexico, and in
Mhm.
her past life regression, she realized she was kind of back in the Middle Ages, if I remember the story correctly, Middle Ages, and she kind of um, was for the people in the community, and she ran afoul with the authority figures, and they threw her in jail, and they started kind of torturing her and starving her to death. Well, that's a really painful way to go, to be starved to death in a
Mhm.
horrible dungeon in the Middle Ages, and she realized that the guard and the jailer who was in charge of her torture and killing her, basically, was her husband in this life.
Oh my
and
goodness.
she ended up divorcing him because of that.
Oh.
There's a divorce decree in, Santa Fe County, New Mexico, where
Mhm.
part of it stays because of his past life regression. I realized he was my jailer and my killer, that I am divorcing this man. Now I'm guessing there's probably other issues within their relationship, but
Mhm.
there was no the point is there's no healing there. It was just an experience that this person was having her go
Mhm.
through to find out some past lives, and it was so horrible that it actually wrecked her life in this current life because there is no healing, there is no resolution, there's no understanding of why that person had to play that awful part. Because sometimes in life, we have to have this turmoil. We have to have these, um, we have to, walk barefoot up the hill. It has to be a little bit of a trial and tribulation in order for the growth. There has to be a little bit of stress. Sometimes people go through a lot of stress, and somebody has to play that part. And that's the mind bending thing around this is, and at least, in America here, Star Wars is very popular. Someone has to play Darth Vader, you know? There's no Star Wars without Darth Vader. He's not a nice person. He's a very, very evil person, a very, very evil character.
Yeah.
But that story there's no story unless you have there's no growth of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, or Princess Leia, or whoever. There's no growth and no development unless there's that tension and that pressure, you know? And so it becomes very mind bending in mine too when you realize, well, maybe somebody chose in your spirit group, in your soul group, up in soul
Mhm.
world, what Michael Newton calls life between lives. As they're handing out the scripts, like you're at in a theater group and you're choosing the new play to do, and they're handing out the parts to play and the costumes people are going to wear. Well, someone has to play the villain, you know, and they might be a nice person outside of that play. But in the play, they have to be a villain and say awful things to people. And it becomes it's a mind twister because people do hurt and people do are in pain. But some of the resolution that can happen, and again, this isn't like to forgive people who did awful things to you. I mean, no, that's not the right way to say it. Certainly, there's forgiveness can happen. Doesn't mean you have to. Um, they shouldn't be there shouldn't be consequences for the evil that people do in the world and the abuse people affect. You shouldn't just shrug your shoulders and, "Wow, I guess I learned a lot from that." There should be consequences for because they have their own growth. That part was probably chosen for them for some other reason, or maybe again another 10-hour conversation around karma and what they did to other people in another life or something. But um, it's all about the healing in this life and what you can achieve and needing to resolve that is because if there was healing in that person's experience of being in jail in the Middle Ages and being tortured to death, starved to death, if there's resolution and healing around that, they might still be married and have even a better relationship, you know? So um, that's what this work is truly all about. It's about uh, what do you need in this current life? And even if it's the experience of understanding you've had past lives and the insights and the discoveries, because you may want to focus on just one specific past life. Maybe it's a past life that most influences this current life, or the past life where you met your greatest spiritual teacher, or maybe um, why you have a certain skill set, whether it's, maybe playing a musical instrument or, it's like the idea that a extraordinary musician like, Yo-Yo Ma, on the classical cello or Corey Ravi Shankar or Ali Akbar Khan or something, is that they just didn't, like, pop into this life and were great at the cello or the, sarod or the sitar or the whatever, Zakir Hussain on the tablas or something. They took multiple lives to get there. And so in the first life, Ravi Shankar probably was pretty terrible at the sitar, and then the next life he's a little bit better, next life a little bit better until he reaches this life, and was born and became a maestro. Or, another example, Bruce Lee with martial arts. It took multiple lives for him to get to the point where he could be the Bruce Lee in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. And and so that may be another. topic somebody may want to discover if they're great at math or science or
Yeah,
computer
yeah.
programming or, healing arts, you know,
Mm.
or, a musical instrument or something else. Uh, you could dance.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things to discover
Mm,
past life
mm,
regression. But again, in terms of the way I work and a lot of us work, I mean, if someone's interested in working with somebody, so I ask some questions like, what's the point of this? Because if it's just fun time, okay, and then you understand what you're getting yourself into. But the problem is, again, if it turns into a more intense experience like that woman had in New Mexico, what's the person going to be able to do for you? Are they gonna
mm,
able to heal or do you just get a past life that's pretty dramatic and awful and terrible? It's just like walking into the movie and not knowing if you're going to a horror movie, a comedy, or a romance, an action adventure. You're just like, "I guess I'll just see the movie and hope that it's a comedy, or it's a
mm,
romance." And then, oh, well, if you get a terrible horror movie, what are you gonna do? It's like, "Oh, no, sorry, that's what you got." And that's why I think it's so important to focus on the healing in this life, or at the very least, the insights and discoveries you can make.
mm,
But not everything needs an emotional healing or some sort of mindset healing or even physical healing. But the insights you can create about, again, your purpose, your mission, your ultimate goals in this life, the people in your life, understanding your place in terms of maybe work or career or school, and
mm.
that can be important too.
Oh, absolutely. I would also like to bring in the aspect of ancestral trauma,
Mm,
generational trauma that
yeah.
we often talk about. Uh, yeah, and this is something which personally I have experienced as well. Like healing not just for ourselves, but for generations before and after us.
Yeah.
So, how does ancestral healing show up in your work, Craig? And if you can support with any example where releasing a pattern in a client brought real transformation.
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting topic because, as you can imagine, there can be emotional connections
Hmm.
to your ancestors. But what science is even showing is there can be an actual genetic component.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's lots of research out there, and of course you can Google all this stuff. In fact, at Google, if you didn't know, um, you can research just scientific studies by going to scholar.google.com, and it's like regular Google, only just searches
A
research
lot of
papers.
people.
If you just go to regular Google and type in Google Scholar, and you can type in things like hypnotherapy or past life regression or ancestral healing or DNA, genetic connections to your ancestors, things like that. But
Mm,
one of the studies that has come out recently showed that the children of Holocaust survivors that were born after the Holocaust, after World War II ended in 1945,
mm-hmm.
they had a genetic marker for fear that was not in the children of people who did not go through the Holocaust. So it can actually
Yeah.
have a genetic change, these connections to your ancestors. And of course, that genetic component is going to be passed down, passed down, passed down, passed down. So how many times, before it kind of gets diluted, how many times back does it go? And, I myself, uh, you know, uh, my family came to, wasn't even America yet, but came to the New World from England
Mm-hmm.
in 1650. And that's,
Yeah.
obviously before 1776 and the, American Revolution and all that. And so my family came to Virginia in the mid
Mm-hmm.
1600s and built America and all that that entails, including owning slaves. My dad was big into genealogy. Back in the
Mm-hmm.
day, the 60s and 70s, when you had to go to records offices and make phone calls and write letters and all sorts of things. And there's census records of how many slaves my ancestors had in America. There's the legal documents, wills, and things about, okay, well, when the father dies, these slaves go to this son, these slaves go to this daughter, this kind of thing. It's awful. It's horrible. It's weird and
Terrible.
strange. In my family, while living in Virginia and then moving down to the South and having plantations and things, hurt a lot of people. And
Mm.
I didn't personally do that. I was born in 1967, but my
Mhm.
ancestors created a lot of hurt and healing. And on Facebook, there are um, 3 Craig Meriwethers, or at least when I last time I looked. I haven't looked in a long time. Maybe there's more now. But
Okay.
when I first looked on Facebook, there's 3 Craig Meriwethers. There's me and then 2 guys who are black. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, black people don't have names like Meriwether unless that's the slave master's name. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of hurt and pain that my family caused other people, and it's horrifying. It's embarrassing. Um,
Mhm.
and so I did some work around that. Even went through some counseling, and this is why I kind of got into it myself. Some counseling around that, and one of the ideas is that, of course, you have your 4 grandparents, uh, grandmother and grandfather on your father's side, your grandmother and grandfather on your mother's side, and you pick one, and you start with that, and you go through that line. So I picked my father's father and started there, and by connecting with, I guess I don't know the best way to say it, but kind of like the counsel of
Mhm.
your family, if that makes any sense, or your spiritual guides that kind of
Mhm. Mhm.
monitor or guide or counsel or coach your that side of family, you work to heal that. And again, it's a very specific thing. It's not like cookie cutter. Okay, we do this, 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 and this, kind of depending on what the situation is. But a lot of healing needed to be happen. Now, I want to be very clear. I didn't do the healing myself. I was more in terms of the healing I did for me and my ancestry. I was more the conduit here on earth. So I
Mhm.
was more like the uh, personal earth representative. Now, of course, there's
Mhm.
lots of Merryweathers and things. I have my brother and up until a few a little bit ago, my father was still alive, and of course, he had my uncles and my cousins and things like that. There's lots of Merryweathers, but for whatever reason, I was attracted to this. I saw the blinking light and thought I'll follow that shiny thing or whatever it was. I
Mhm.
ended up being the chosen representative on Earth to hold space or be the grounding agent for this healing. I didn't necessarily do the healing. It just
Mm.
sort of like
Yeah, conduit.
somebody on earth needs to do this, and then we'll do the heavy lifting. Right? The spiritual side of things will do the sort of like you have a cut on your finger. It's like, well, as a human body, you're gonna, yeah, that's the cut on the finger, and that needs to be healed. You don't really think about doing the healing. The healing happens with it,
Mm.
right? You don't have to really do anything about it. It heals
Mm.
itself. You get a scrape on your leg, a scab will form, and the antibodies will form, and new tissue will form, and then
Mm.
new skin, and then you look a week later, there's no, you forgot about it. There's no scab. It's sort of like
Mm.
that. Now, that was my experience. Other people have different, very different experiences because, again, this is, while maybe some of the techniques are similar, everybody's experience is a bit different of what they need to do to create healing. And even if somebody may be adopted and unsure of their heritage, grew up as an orphan, maybe, and weren't quite
Mm.
sure of their parents or the records were lost. I know a lot of the older people. Sometimes, especially in wartime, records get burned down and records offices get burned down. Things
Yeah.
just gone. It's lost. There was no computers back then. There was no cloud. And so, even if that's the case, there's still an opportunity to connect with guides and through kind of proxy, if you will, align with your ancestors and connect with them. Um, and so, because really, who knows their, maybe some people do. I guess if people have this extraordinary experience, but,
Mhm.
your great-great-grandmother, you know? I was
Mm.
lucky enough
Mm.
to meet have experiences with my great-grandmother, who lived to
Wow.
be 102, and,
Mhm.
uh, but, that's very rare for a lot of people, and especially when you're getting back to the great-great-grandparents. Yeah, you can still have a connection with them, even though you didn't know them, you might not even know their names. You can still have a connection to them because there's that ancestral energy linking you together. And so it can be quite healing, not just for you, uh, but for the lineage and for the
Mhm.
maybe, hopefully, I hope, my intention was for the people we cause great harm to,
Mhm.
I hope that that was forgives, you know, to me, what I got was just, it got cleared and that energetic clearance happened. So I, you know, I don't know if how might affect the past, how that might affect the future. It's
Mhm.
just that I took my time, to research and study and do some processes, and because I wanted to help, you know?
Um,
Yeah.
w I mean, of course, I think 30 minutes is not justified because there's
Yeah.
so much to understand here,
Oh,
Craig.
yeah, yeah.
So
Absolutely. I mean, I've
so
just, like I said, one aspect of this topic we could
yeah.
talk for weeks and weeks. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, just in terms of the book, I mean, it took me 7 months to write the book, because I was doing so much research and looking things up and discussing things and
Mhm.
turning it, and so yeah, it's an extraordinary, um, heavy topic to discuss, and it's just, yeah, just obviously brushing the surface, but hopefully, people are interested and they'll wanna do their own research and look into it. I mean, because that's what it's all about. It's like having your own experience and your own healing. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And any prerequisite you advise, because sometimes for many it can be really very overwhelming, someone who is already dealing with a lot of ancestral trauma and is aware of the fact that, something especially negative has been done because of which it maybe it's getting carried through me and I want to kind of, um, cleanse that. And
Yeah.
prerequisite that you recommend before getting into this?
Yeah, it would, I think a lot of, the work starts just with you and the healing you need to start focusing on in this life. Now, some people, uh, and I say follow your intuition. That's your
Mm,
subconscious mind, your higher self speaking to you. So follow your intuition. And like I do hypnotherapy,
mhm,
and the kind of deeper aspect of that is past life regression. And sometimes people want to start just with some hypnotherapy to clear and cleanse what has
mhm,
happened in this life. Maybe there was some abuse, maybe there's some trauma, or just some anxiety or anger. And and it's sort of like the swimming pool. Sometimes, yeah, you may just want to ease into the pool, like a little kid gets in the pool, their ankles into their knees, and then they're in their waist, and then, "Mom, look at me. Mom, look at me. Mom, now I'm up to my chest," you know, and then they're swimming in the pool. And then let's head over to the deep end. You feel safe, you feel comfortable, you feel relaxed, and you understand how this works, you know it works. So let's head over to the deep end. Other people say, "No, I feel like just running and jumping in the deep end and having fun." Or having that experience because my intuition is telling me, "No, this is linked directly to a past life," and I've done and oftentimes, I'll tell you, oftentimes, what people say is, "I've done years of counseling,
mhm,
I've done read all the books, I've
mhm.
done to the retreats and the workshops, and I still hurt." And I read Brian Weiss's book, I read Dolores Cannon, I read Michael Newton. And I hear these stories of other people who have these extraordinary experiences and heal, and I want that too. And the only thing I could think of is that this must be a past life because 'cause I've tried everything else, you know? And so and good, I'm glad that was presented to you because that's pretty extraordinary. All of a sudden, this book comes into your life. And that's a pretty, extraordinary sign, pretty extraordinary coincidence. And And so however you come to this work and however you want to ease into it or just let's go right into it, is the right way to do it. So what I tell people if they're asking for advice, I'm like, well, should I just do plain hypnotherapy for a couple sessions or should I just go right into past life regression? It's like, so what do you feel is right? What if I was to say right now you have to choose if I was to give somebody advice and they come to me and they say, I don't know which one to do, just some hypnotherapy or past life regression, and I said, no, you should do like 2 sessions of hypnotherapy. Would you be disappointed? I was like, yeah, I guess so. I was like, okay, then let's do past life regression first.
Mhm.
That's your intuition telling you.
Yeah.
Or do I say, no, let's do a couple sessions of hypnotherapy and clear this stuff. Do you feel relieved? Oh, good. So I was nervous that we'd have to go right into the past life regression. I don't think I'm ready yet. But my friend did it that way, and they had a wonderful experience, so I think I should do it their way. No, 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 you do it your way. And what is your intuition telling you? And that's you talking to you.
Yeah.
So, and it's very personal, it's very and it customized and you want to feel comfortable with the person you're working with too. There's lots of wonderful people out there who do this work, around the world. And what's nice is with Zoom, which and this works perfectly well over Zoom. In fact, what the
Mhm.
research shows is that Zoom sessions, whether you're talk therapy or life coaching or relationship counseling or doctor's appointment or something like hypnotherapy or past life regression, works just as well over Zoom as it does in person. In fact, what some research shows, it works better over Zoom because people feel comfortable and relaxed
Comfortable.
in their homes.
Exactly.
They feel safe in their homes.
Yeah.
And they don't if they live in a big city, they don't have to drive across town, trying to get to their
Yeah.
appointment on time. But, and so, finding somebody you feel comfortable working with, you feel in rapport with, and, look through their websites, maybe they have videos on YouTube or something, and just ask all the questions, before you start.
Greg, of course, if our listeners they would like to connect with you to begin with on this journey, what would be the best way?
The best way would, my website is Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy. The short one is just sacredhypno.com, sacredhypnotherapy.com. The book is Past Lives Guidebook, which, at least in America and UK, you can get on Amazon. Maybe it's in your local bookstore, hopefully. And, yeah, I'm happy to, I'm on the social medias, though I don't do those so well. It'd be better just to go to my website and email me through that, and happy to talk with you about it.
Super. I'll make sure to have all the details in the show notes for our listeners. And Greg, I mean, this was such an enriching, conversation. Kind of, I shouldn't say a sneak peek, but it kind of ignites that fire to
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
dive deep into who we are. Questions
Yeah.
like, who am I? Why is this happening? Let's just find the answers. And the best part is that, we get that provision to heal ourselves, not just, be aware of it, but to heal ourselves. And that is empowering, it's enlightening. So, thank you so much for showing us that the soul holds wisdom far deeper than the mind can grasp.
Oh, well, thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate being on your podcast, and, yeah, love to continue the conversation down the road sometime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And to all my beautiful listeners out there, to all the beautiful souls out there, whether you are curious, skeptical, or you're already walking the path, maybe the invitation is simple: to stay open, to listen for the whispers of your soul in this life and beyond. So, thank you to everyone for tuning into this episode of Cosmic Confluence. I hope may your own journey inward reveal exactly what you are ready to know. Until next time, stay aligned, stay curious, and keep walking your cosmic path. Thank you.